Hey everybody, I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend Colleen today. Colleen and I met in Nashville in November of 2015 at the Leading and Loving It retreat. And from the moment we said hi in the lobby, I knew that she had an incredible story to share. And I was already so excited to be able to share her story with each of you. So Colleen, thank you so much. And to kick it off, who's Colleen?
Yeah. I am actually a single missionary who lives in Baltimore, Maryland. I am the only white girl in a very large radius. So when you come in, you would spot me in a crowd, which I love. That's actually something that just really excites me, like the diversity that's in my life. I love owls. I love kids. I've been on an incredible weight loss journey. I've lost over 200 pounds. So yeah, I don't know if you came into my world, I think the first thing you would notice is that my house is always full of teenagers and owls. That is what you would notice about my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I love it. So, why don't you just take a couple minutes and share your story? How have you arrived to where you are right now?
Yeah. I actually have a really great journey that I love to share because I believe that people need to hear. Like God gives us all a story long before we know it. And as I continue to tell my story, I have really grown to embrace that God was creating a story in me when I was 5 years old that I didn't honestly know that I would ever share with anyone. And, I grew up in a home and I work, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I work in an inner city neighborhood. And so I grew up in a home very similar to the kids that God was preparing me at that time to work with. A mom who was absent, a dad who was addicted to drugs, alcohol, extremely abusive. Eventually moving in with my grandparents and having them raise me. And a lot of the kids I work with come from single family homes or homes where a friend is raising them or foster care or grandparents or aunts. I mean, not even 2-parent homes, let alone one. So it's on this journey that I've learned that God was preparing me. And so when I was 10 years old, I moved in with my grandparents. I had to grow up very, very quickly and help raise 3 siblings. And so I matured very quickly and became a mom, like at 10 or 11 years old. And then when I went off to college, I had this understanding that if someone showed me interest, that meant that they loved me. And having a past of abuse from my father, like mentally, physically, sexually, like I became very much someone who needed that attention from males. And so I was sleeping around, I was partying, I was just doing things that, I knew weren't me, but not knowing who God was, I didn't know how to get out of that. And so at 21, I woke up one morning and I was like, something in my life has to change because I do not want the life that has been prepared for me by a worldly standard. And I knew that there was something different. And so I interviewed with a family in North Carolina, a family in California, and a family in Maryland. And they said to me after a 4-hour interview, we'll call you back on Tuesday and we'll let you know. And they actually ended up calling me back that same day and they were asking me if I could get here by Tuesday. And I said yes. And so I got on an airplane with a plan for 1 year and a suitcase, and I was going to come to Maryland and life was going to be great in a year, and I was going to move home to Kansas and be with what was familiar. And God had different plans, and God grabbed a hold of me at 22 years old and literally shook up my life and took something that was broken and began to repair it. And I wish I could say that at 22, it became all rainbows and butterflies, but it wasn't. It was a very long journey of messing up and figuring it out and finding sisters to walk through life with me and finding godly men who could pour into my life so that I would see what a man should look like. And so through that journey, though, God really opened my heart to inner city. And I fell in love with something that I knew existed but didn't know how to get to. And so through a series of mission trips and events, I came back to Baltimore. I was convinced I was going to move to Los Angeles, packed my stuff, was ready to go. And God was like, no, you're not going anywhere. And He opened a door for me to do ministry in a neighborhood. And I was commuting there every day. And it was just like something I want to be intentional. I don't want to go home at the end of the day. Like, I want to be here. I want to be here when someone gets shot outside. I want to be here when there's a kid in crisis. I want to be here when when riots happened in April, and my kids, this is their safe place. This is where they came. And all my friends are like, we're coming to get you. And I'm like, no, I'm staying here. Like, what would that look like if I left? And so about 5 years ago, God shook up my world again and pulled away the ministry that I was in and really began to shut doors. And I was kind of heartbroken because I had planned my life there. And so he opened another door though for me to literally move in next to the church that I'm serving at and live in the neighborhood and be here and to have to walk through like being a single white woman, moving into a neighborhood, having people question my decision, having the kids not want to talk to me because they thought I was an undercover police officer, really having to spend time building trust. And, all through that, God just kept saying, you have to persevere. I brought you so far and you have to do this. Like, this is where I want you. This is where I need you. And every day I wake up and it's a constant reminder of, God has taken something that was broken in my life and in my heart and made something beautiful out of it. And every day I get to love kids who I see a 5-year-old me in them. And I see that, and I tell them all the time, I'm like, I wish that I would have had the people that God has so strategically placed in your life. And so he brought me here and I've chosen to live here. I've chosen to make this my life. And I will tell you, it hasn't been easy, but throughout my journey, God has reminded me, like, I've brought you so far. I've brought you from really the pits of what was my own personal hell and brought me to a mountaintop. And I will say like that, honestly, right now I'm in a valley, but every day I've chosen to find joy in that valley and know that there's a mountain coming. And I think that part of my journey is those valleys and all of our journeys. And I think that, when I look back to that girl at 21 years old who got on a plane with a plan, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever make a plan for my life ever again. And so, now this is my life. This is what God's given me. And every day I pray and I thank God, like you've not only restored my life, but you've given me a gift, and a gift that not many people get to experience. I mean, not many people can quit their job and live full time as a missionary and in a place like this. And this is what I've chosen to do. And so every day I'm thankful that God's given me a story. And I believe that God's given us all a story.
That's absolutely incredible. And I love what you were saying too about, you were this girl, you went out and you had a plan, and now you're not making a plan. You're just taking each next step as God puts it in front of you. And when I hear your story, like, oh my goodness, I see a woman who is standing confidently knowing who she is and whose she is. And from there, like, you're conquering any obstacle or anything that comes your way. And I think that's huge. And that's the heart of what we even do when we believe through BecomingMe.tv. So I love that. And, if you were sitting across from another woman on her own becoming journey, you're having coffee, tea, you're hanging out, doing life together, what would you say to encourage her?
I think I would tell her, I had a very wise mentor in my life who just said to me, like, God's developing a story in you. And so many times I hear women say, well, I don't have a great story like you do. But guess what? God's given us all a story. And whether your story is that you grew up in a Christian home and life has been, this Christian walk, like, God's still going to put people in your path that need to hear that. And so I think that the most important thing to remember is that God's developing a story in you. And it might not even be a story that's happened yet. And so something that I've learned and something that I encourage other women in my personal life is, honestly, like, you have to take a back seat and let God drive you. And you have to let God create those stories. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful. It's going to be joyful. But I've learned that finding the joy and even the painful things is what makes it your story.
Yep. That's huge. I absolutely love that. And I couldn't agree more. So thank you just so much for sharing your story, your heart, and the adventure that you're living, and just the encouragement that we all have a story. That's huge. So thank you. And for all of you who are watching, make sure to connect with Colleen on social media so you can be following her adventures and encouraging and supporting her as she's living out who God made her to be as well. So thank you so much.